I'm going to be replacing the brake slides on my M3 today. They're pretty worn out. I've already done the front ones a few months ago. It's not terribly difficult to do. So these are what I bought from Turner Motorsport. They're from ECS Tuning, but ECS Tuning bought Turner Motorsport a while back ago. They actually own quite a lot of the more well-known part suppliers for BMWs. My video is going to be fairly basic, as I've only got my iPhone to do this with. I'm going to purchase a camera eventually, but my beer doesn't have to be basic. This one's pretty good actually. It's kind of gotta have a beer when you're working on your car. It's just kind of a mechanic thing. Don't have a whole lot of tools, but you don't really need a whole lot of tools to do this job. So I used to have a lot better tools, but when I moved from Alaska down to Florida, I ended up having to get rid of a lot of what I had. I wasn't expecting the Garda Reserve to PCS me, but they did. So I got rid of a lot of stuff and I didn't need to, but oh well, I'll build it back up. So let me get started. All right, got the car up on jacks. Got the wheel off. Essentially what we'll be replacing is this right here along with the bolt. This is what will be going into it. This brass piece right now is a rubber piece that's actually on the car, and putting this in should make your brake pedal feel a little bit better. I don't know about the brake pedal. Your braking should feel more firm overall. I've done the fronts and I didn't really notice too much of a difference from when the car was new anyways. I was getting a lot of brake dust on the driver's side front tire, so I replaced the wheel bearing, which actually helped a little bit because they were starting to go out, but I also replaced these on it as well, and now I don't get as much brake dust. So that rubber stuff really does wear out pretty quickly. Pretty common fail item. So step one is to take your brake caliper off, which is pretty simple to do. You need a 16mm socket or wrench. There's a bolt right there and a bolt up there that you'll need to take off. You'll also need to take off this cap, because this will allow you to actually replace the parts that I'm trying to replace. You need a 7mm Allen socket, and should fit right in there, and that should release it from the other side of your brake caliper. Something else that should help also is to give yourself some slack in your brake line. You need to take this clip out. That should just pull out with some pliers, and that should release this brake line. What I'm hoping is that I'll be able to possibly somehow get this around the shock. Maybe. We'll see. Got the caliper off, sitting on the jack. I just got to take out these little bolts. And these should just pull out. I usually use pliers for it. Makes it a little bit easier. Probably have to put the phone down to do this. I can use both hands. So this piece ended up coming apart a little easier than I was anticipating, but basically with the brake pad in there and the clip that was right there, it was really easy to just kind of pull on it, and it all just came apart pretty easy. And that should give you enough room to get the brass pieces into here with the clamp that we're going to need. Okay, now we're ready to put in the brass insert. The flat part goes towards the caliper so that it will clear, because it's pretty close as you can see. Let's just go in like that. This piece of this tool that I got from Turner Motorsport goes on the back end, and then you would just take a C-clamp and push this together. There's another piece to this. This part goes on. It's got a pretty tiny little lip right there, so it kind of pops out sometimes if you don't have it on there perfectly. But it still works. So I had instructions for all of this somewhere when I bought these parts, but I don't know where they are now. One thing that it did say was to, once this seats, to be very careful, because as we all know, brass is not exactly very strong. It's very malleable. So you don't want to bend these or break these. So as soon as it seats, just give it just a little bit of a tug, I guess, just to make sure it's seated good, and then that should be it. Should be good. So I just came up with this. It just dawned on me I could probably just tape that cap piece on. So that should help. So as you do this, it's easier if you put, if you set it up like this, make sure that you leave a little bit of space right there so that your C-clamp also doesn't hit the caliper as you clamp it down. And from here you just ratchet it on, and it should go on pretty easy. I wish that I had somebody to film for me so that I could show you just how easily this side went on. That one, I had to put a little bit of force behind it to get it to actually go in. This one went in pretty smoothly. Not sure why that is. Just the machining of the brass pieces possibly, or the machining of the caliper itself, I'm not sure, but it went in pretty easy. Both sides ultimately were pretty easy to put on. So now we just have to do the reverse of what I did to take it apart, and then that should be it. So this is the caliper grease that you want to use, or another brand, it doesn't really matter. It goes, basically you would coat this with it, or coat the inside of the brass caliper with it, and that should prevent it from squeaking. So after we put it all back together, this should just slide right in, and that's why you need the caliper grease. So as your brake pads wear, this obviously moves, and it could create squeaking with all of the forces that are behind it. So don't want to forget that. I definitely like this 2 Hearted L better than the last one I was drinking. This stuff is fire. Super good. So let's put a little bit of that stuff on the Q-tip, and I'm just gonna, I'll probably usually go through the back and just kind of coat it. And that should be good. I'm gonna coat those as well, so just to make sure everything's good. So if I had somebody to film this for me, this was pretty easy to do. You want to put the inside brake pad in first, because it has some prongs on it that go into the piston. So then stick your pad right here on, making sure that it is touching right here and right there, as you can see. Stick this piece on, and as you can see, it goes over that, and then you take your clip, and if you bring it down, basically just come this way, stick these in there as best you can, and then you just turn it up, and it should push these down and go on. When I did the front brakes a few months ago, this was a pain on those ones. At least on one side it was a pain. This one actually went on pretty easy, so I'm not sure why some are easy and some aren't, but this one went on pretty easy. So might have to play with it just a little bit to get it to go on, but it's pretty simple. So I got the finished product, got both bushings on, got the caliper grease in there, and that's a wrap.
Just got to do the other side now. So this should go pretty smoothly. So thanks for tuning in if you happen to tune in.
Something I forgot to mention before, I looked up the instructions online on Turner Motorsport, and there's some rubber O-rings that you're supposed to install onto the brass bushings after you install them into the calipers, and after or before you test fit the slides. You want to make sure those fit correctly. So obviously this one's not installed, but I test fitted everything, so once I put this in, it should fit just fine, and the grease should help with the slide in better. Also, the metal clips right there, once you install the bushing, it'll go into this groove right there, this groove, and that should keep the bushing from sliding out. I don't think there's much of a chance of that happening, as they fit fairly tightly, and just the way that everything screws together, I really don't see that happening, but it's not impossible, I suppose, and that's what the instructions say, and it would be catastrophic if your brakes came apart. So I would follow the instructions and make sure you install those clips. I did go back and install everything on what I just did that I didn't show, so everything should be good. What I didn't show you on the other side, hopefully, okay, yeah, kind of like that. It just comes apart super easy. And those are those little flanges as to why it needs to go. This one needs to go on that side.